This KP's Video News, yo.
All right, folks, we're getting ready to get busy here, and these stories here, man, are this is like wow. This one here is like understanding what's going on, and we got a police state jumping off here right now. The police are pushing back, man, and they're pushing back hard since they started the protest about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and against police brutality and police killing people. So what's going on now is you're getting this crazy pushback by the police departments, and a lot of other little weird things that are going on that are not making it to the news media. Okay, so you have some terrifying situation, man, where you had plainclothes New York police grabbing, snatching a teen, and in New York. This is in New York. I mean, you had somebody that snatched somebody up in Portland, over in Portland, but this is in New York. So New York police and protesters clashed in the streets of New York on Tuesday, yesterday, after an arrest that some say looked more like a kidnapping. And the video of the arrest posted to social media sparking outrage, man. People are outraged over this. Brooklyn resident Mike Laster has been protesting all over the country since the death of George Floyd in May. He says Tuesday night, a large group had peacefully set up to march and feed the homeless in a park at 2nd Avenue and 25th Street in Kips Bay when police on bikes showed up and things got out of hand. They grabbed a transgender woman and threw him to the ground, Lester said. And I tried to separate myself from an officer and the protest, and he threw a bike on me, and he got cuts all on his hands. And between the men in plain clothes and the unmarked van, Laster and others say it looked like a kidnapping. But the NYPD claims that the woman they arrested, a 19-year-old Nikki Stone, was wanted for spray painting the lenses of 6 police cameras during separate criminal incidents in and around City Hall Park. Says this squad uses unmarked vehicles to find wanted suspects. They also say the arresting officers were assaulted with rocks and bottles. The police say 7 officers were injured overall on Tuesday, and 4 taken to a local hospital and 3 treated on the scene. And if you introduce violence to us, we got to reciprocate that violence, Laster said. Police say as the night went on, protesters blocked traffic. They took about a dozen people into custody. In the midst of the screaming during the tense standoff, you can hear people insisting they were never violent, saying we were peaceful. Others shouted profanities at police and even daring them to douse them with pepper spray. And as for the arrest video, it's not going away quietly. The city council speaker and public advocate are disturbed and concerned, both calling for answers. Representative Jerry Nadler, a Democrat from New York who chairs the House Judiciary Committee, said in a tweet that the video of a protester in New York being thrown in an unmarked van is terrifying and should be unacceptable to anyone who respects the constitutional rights this country was founded on. He called for an immediate explanation for this anonymous use of force. And they have like other rights organizations and the Human Rights Campaign called the video deeply troubling and demanded New York authorities explain Stone's whereabouts, so nobody don't even know where this person is. Wow. So I'm telling you, man, it's a lot of crazy stuff going on. A lot of crazy stuff going on here. So I'm going on to the next cop story here, police state story, man. There's a lot of junk going on here. So this situation here, they got a police surveillance But Black Lives Matter shows the danger technology poses to democracy. U.S. police forces have been turning to technology to track down Black Lives Matter protesters. Content from social media platforms and affiliated sites has been instrumental in the authorities being able to identify protesters based on photos of their faces, clothes, and hair, or the fact that they posted while at the protest. Meanwhile, drones have been added to the police's own means of capturing footage of the protest, making technology-driven state surveillance part of the police's response to democratic protests sets a dangerous precedent. There is a risk that the power this gives to the police to target protesters could be abused and have a chilling effect on freedom of speech and assembly. This is particularly true in the case of Black Lives Matter, given alleged evidence of the infiltration of the U.S. law enforcement agencies by white supremacists. What's more, the amount of data on people that is gathered by the technology and potentially available to law enforcement is set to grow thanks to the rapid expansion of internet-connected devices. The Internet of Things could, if left unchecked, give authorities seemingly unlimited ways to mine for information on people, both users of the technology and bystanders. Voice-operated assistants such as Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home record our conversations. Smartwatches and fitness trackers monitor our movements, even as many traditional home appliances now collect data on us, from smart fridges to washing machines. The growing prevalence of a variety of these devices means a huge amount of data can be compiled on us by corporations in the name of improving user service or targeted advertising. But thanks to recent surveillance laws, state authorities can also request and gather a large amount of this data, and government bodies are already starting to capitalize on the new capabilities provided by the Internet of Things. For example, some IoT technologies, such as the internet-connected Amazon Ring doorbells that can record video footage, have become an informal addition to state surveillance infrastructure. Ring's partnership with police forces gives them access to the camera location so they can request footage from specific device owners and obtain a warrant if they refuse. Some deals have involved giving away the doorbells to the public for free. This effectively creates a cheap state monitoring network that has reportedly led to racial profiling among users. Wow. Threat to profile protesters. The IoT technology could also be used specifically against protesters, activists, and journalists. Not only could the collected data be used to identify or track people even more effectively than social media posts, but reliance on the technology could also leave people and groups vulnerable to cyber attacks. For example, in Hong Kong, we've seen attempts to disrupt the communication of protesters and force them to use less secure channels that can more easily be monitored. There's even a chance that the rise of hackable internet-connected cars could lead to more vehicular attacks on protests and have occurred against anti-racism demonstrations in the United States. Despite these threats, our recent research shows journalists in particular are not generally aware of a protective from IoT technology being used to target them. What's more, having your data gathered by IoT devices might soon be unstoppable even if you don't own or use them. And as part of our research, we surveyed 34 cybersecurity experts and found that 76.5% of them believe that it will not be possible for people to opt out of interaction with IoT within the next 5 years. Wow. Man. So, so as well as providing secure, this encrypted messages, and the app Signal has responded to police forces' technological identification of protesters by creating a tool that blurs people's faces in photos. Although program exists that can attempt to unblur pixelated photos, the fact that so much software isn't built with black people in mind could ironically make it worse at revealing the faces of people of color. This issue reminds us that technology is never neutral, particularly when people exercising their right to protest have their data used against them. In this case, against people fighting against structural racism and police brutality against black and indigenous people. That's the police state. It's going on in the United States right now. That's where we at. You know, so this last story is one that kind of really upset me. I mean, all of them do. All three of these stories do upset me, but this one upsets me the worst because it says a judge patently unconstitutional. Portland judges are barring arrestees from attending protests as a condition of release in a move that legal experts say is patently unconstitutional. Federal authorities in Portland are arresting people for minor offenses, then barring them from attending any future protests as a condition of their release. So according to the report, at least 12 people arrested in connection with the demonstrations were expressly prohibited from being present at any future public demonstrations as they await their days in court. In one instance, the conditions of the release issued by the U.S. District Court in Oregon for a defendant whose offense was failing to comply with the lawful direction of a federal officer stated that the defendant may not attend any other protests, rallies, assemblies, or public gatherings in the entire state of Oregon. The order further stated that any violation of the conditions of release may result in the immediate issuance of a warrant for your arrest, a revocation of release, and an order of detention, forfeiture of bond, and a prosecution for contempt of court, and it could result in a term of imprisonment, fine, or both. According to the report, in several instances where the aforementioned conditions of release were not available at the time of the detainee's release, Magistrate Judge John Acosta added the provision by hand. He wrote it in. Just wrote it in. Wow. On the release form, just wrote this stuff on there. Just created the law right on the spot. So Judge Magistrate Russo similarly added a handwritten protest ban provision to be at least 3 of the 15 release orders she signed Monday. Constitutional law experts were quick to call out the orders as direct violations of the First Amendment. Senior staff attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union told that release conditions generally concern whether the defendant poses a risk of flight or threat to public safety. This is neither, he said, citing the protest ban sort of hilariously unconstitutional. Attorney Christian Fierres of the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University compared the unconstitutionality of the provision to the one case of Donald Trump's former attorney and fixer Michael Cohen. This was blatantly unconstitutional when they tried it on Michael Cohen, who was convicted of multiple felonies. It's even more so when the people being restrained from exercising First Amendment rights were merely facing accusations that may not stand up in court. So the University of Texas professor called the condition stunningly overboard. So they just wrote in. So it's like you get a release form when you get released from you go before the court, and the judge just literally took a pen and just wrote stuff on the paperwork. You can't do this, and this. So that's a total, complete violation of your constitutional rights. They cannot just create rules and regulations like that and just wrote it on the paperwork. Just wrote it on there. You can't attend any more rallies, and if you do, I'm going to lock you up and revoke your bail, and issue a warrant for your arrest. Just wrote it on there. So this is where we at right now, folks. It's the police state jumping off, thanks to Trump and Barr over there doing their little crazy you know, Abbott and Costello routine over there. You gotta watch them. You gotta watch them.
It's KP's Video News, y'all. It's KP's Video News, y'all.
That's right, folks. KP Video
It's
News.
KP's Video News, y'all.
Peace, y'all.